Welcome to The Growth Spurt, a weekly AI podcast by the Second Baptist Church of Ann Arbor.
And today we're digging into the second part of a really compelling series called Difficult Conversations.
Our source material is a sermon titled, Where is the Line? Boundaries and Peace, and it was delivered by Dr. Stephen J. Daniels, Sr.
And our mission today is, well, it's understanding why setting clear limits, hard limits in our relationships isn't just nice, it's absolutely necessary.
We're focusing on this idea of the line, that point separating what's okay from what you just what you just won't accept.
And a key thing that jumps out right away is if you don't draw your own line, someone else is definitely going to try and push it or even erase it completely.
Okay, so let's get into the source of this lesson. A big one from Genesis, Jacob and his uncle, who's also his father-in-law, Laban.
Right. Genesis 31, this relationship, it was defined by suspicion, 20 years of manipulation, deceit, just constant game.
20 years is a long time for things to be sour.
It is. And you need to look at the specifics of the exploitation to see why that boundary became so crucial. Jacob worked 7 years for Rachel.
Yeah, the love of his life.
Right. Only Laban tricks him, gives him Leah, the older sister, instead. Claims it's, custom.
So Jacob has to work another 7 years just to marry Rachel.
Exactly. That's 14 years right there. But then he stays another 6 years.
So 20 years total.
20 years. And the text is clear. During that time, Laban keeps up his, let's call them shady business practices. He changes Jacob's wages 10 times.
10 times. That really paints a picture of just constant instability and manipulation.
It does. It shows, when one person is willing to be deceitful, the other person has to be constantly on guard or leave.
Which Jacob finally does. He's had enough, and he leaves, kind of secretly, with his whole family.
But Laban, being the manipulator he is, chases after him. 7 days he pursues him, catches up in Gilead.
And does he apologize for, 2 decades of fraud?
Not a chance. He actually manufactures outrage. Ask Jacob why he dragged his daughters away like prisoners, plays the victim because he didn't get his big farewell scene, kissing the grandkids goodbye.
Well, the manipulation just keeps going.
It does. And that confrontation, that becomes the turning point. They realize they have to stop the cycle, the endless bickering.
So separation's the only way out.
It seems so. And they need to make it formal, enforce it with a line, so they make a covenant. They mark it physically, a pile of stones, Galid, the witness pile, and a monument, Mizpah, the watchtower.
A physical boundary.
A physical line in the sand, or, well, stones in this case. Laban promises he won't cross it to harm Jacob, and Jacob promises the same. They drew the line.
Okay, so that physical act leads us right to the big question. What is the line? Why is it so important, and maybe why is it so hard to draw sometimes?
Well, the sermon defines boundaries pretty simply. It's that line of demarcation, the limit between acceptable and unacceptable behavior.
And there's a really powerful story in the source material that makes this super practical. Comes from Dr. Daniels' own experience, a pastoral interview from years ago.
Yeah, 17 years ago. They hit him with that classic challenge question. Can we call you anytime, middle of the night?
The loyalty test, right?
Exactly. Test loyalty, but also test boundaries. And instead of just saying, yes, of course, his wife steps in with 2 brilliant questions.
Okay, what were they?
First, what systems do you currently have in place now to handle overnight emergencies? And second, what would actually classify as an emergency?
Ooh, that's good. Shifts the focus immediately to structure and definition.
Totally stop the room, apparently. But the real gem, the core wisdom for you listening, came from Mother Martha Hughes.
What did she say?
She said, it's always good to establish boundaries on the front end of a relationship than to try and establish them on the back end.
Ah, that's the key takeaway right there. Do it early. Because trying to set rules later, that's tough.
It's incredibly difficult to enforce a standard that wasn't there before. So, okay, why bother? Why face that difficulty? The sermon gives us 3 really solid reasons.
All right, let's hear them. Reason number 1.
Boundaries protect our peace.
Protect our peace. Okay, that sounds fundamental.
It really is. And if you look back at that Mizpah covenant, that famous line, may the Lord keep watch between us, people use it like a sweet blessing now.
Yeah, you hear it sometimes at farewells or something.
Right. But in context, it was basically 2 guys saying, this relationship is broken beyond repair. We need God to watch over us because we don't trust each other. And this boundary is here to keep the peace from each other.
Wow, that's a totally different meaning. It's about separation for peace.
Exactly. Peace of mind, peace of spirit. It's essential. And sometimes you have to guard it fiercely.
Which leads to some practical stuff the sermon mentioned, right? about managing drama.
Oh, yeah. Dealing with people who, just show up unannounced, or maybe more relatable today, intentionally letting calls go to voicemail.
That can feel harsh sometimes, though.
It can, but it's not about a lack of love. It's a filter. If you know a certain person, calling usually means, as the sermon puts it, pure, unadulterated drama.
Oh.
Whether it's solving their recurring problems again or just those anxious where you been calls, you have to protect your own energy, your peace.
So there's a trade-off. Protecting your peace might mean limiting access, limiting the emotional energy you give out.
Absolutely. It's tough cutting off access sometimes, but the alternative is often that constant low-level stress. Draining.
Okay, so protect peace. What's the second reason for drawing the line?
Boundaries sustain our standards.
Our standards. Okay, explain that.
Standards are, the foundation, our values, our rules, our principles. Boundaries are what uphold those standards.
And there's a critical point here about self-respect, isn't there?
Yes. The mirror principle, the lines you draw. Nobody else will respect them until you respect them first. If you don't hold firm to your own standards, why would anyone else?
That makes sense. You can't expect consistency from others if you're inconsistent yourself.
And that's exactly why trying to bring in new rules late in the game is so hard. You draw that line finally, and what do you hear?
Hey, you knew what this was when we started.
Exactly. Or that classic one. You can't change the game in the ninth inning, boo. People resist change, especially if they benefited from the lack of boundaries before.
So how do you handle that pushback when you do try to establish boundaries later on?
Well, the key seems to be unwavering consistency, and accepting that resistance is probably coming. You can't have what the source calls sometimey enforcement or bipolar boundaries.
Rules on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but not Tuesday.
Yeah, basically. That just sends mixed signals. It kills your credibility. People won't know where they stand, or they'll just keep testing the line.
And there's another trap there too, right? About manipulation.
Mm-hmm. If you set a boundary, but then you're secretly kind of waiting for them to cross it just so you can react, that's not healthy either. That can become its own form of manipulation. If you say you're done, you need to be done.
Right. You lose the high ground if you're not genuinely committed to the boundary you set.
And expect resistance. There's research mentioned from the book Difficult Conversations showing that when we try really hard to persuade someone forcefully, what often happens?
They dig their heels in more.
Bingo. It leads to increased resistance, not understanding. So you have to let go of needing them to agree with your line. Or even like it.
Your job isn't to make them happy about the boundary.
Nope. Your job is to enforce it consistently. Don't let their reaction make you feel guilty for protecting yourself or upholding your standards.
Okay, protect peace, sustain standards. What's the third and final reason?
This one's about closure, really. Boundaries symbolize the benediction to our bickering.
The end of the argument.
Essentially, yes. The end of the back and forth. Ultimately, boundaries are about respect. Respect for your space, your time, your values, your availability.
And going back to Jacob and Laban, Jacob didn't need Laban to be happy about the separation, did he?
Not at all. He just needed Laban to respect the line. That line provided clarity. It ended 20 years of deceit, of constant conflict.
And the ending of that story in Genesis 31 is pretty telling.
It really is. There's no big dramatic reconciliation. Laban doesn't shake Jacob's hand. There's no hug.
What happens?
It says Laban got up early the next morning. He kissed his grandchildren. He kissed his daughters, and he blessed them and returned home.
He just left.
He left. The boundary worked. Why? Because Jacob finally stood firm on it. Laban respected the line, and the text implies he never bothered Jacob again.
So the constant bickering finally got its benediction, its closing blessing through separation, not agreement.
Exactly. Setting boundaries, especially after a long time without them, takes real strength. It's difficult. But the end game, the potential payoff, is that the source of the trouble eventually leaves. Peace is restored.
This has been really insightful. A deep dive into why setting limits isn't selfish. It's actually an act of self-preservation and respect. So, quick recap. Boundaries protect your peace, they sustain your standards, and they can finally bring an end to draining, ongoing conflict.
Which leaves us with a final thought, a challenge maybe, for you listening.
Okay, what is it?
What are your non-negotiables? What are the things you simply will not accept, will not do? And maybe more importantly, do the people in your life actually know what those limits are?
Because the power isn't just in knowing your line.
It's in declaring it and then standing firmly on it, 10 toes down, as they say, just like Jacob finally did at Mizpah. Go in peace, be blessed, and may the joy of Jesus be yours. We'll see you next week.